Imagine opening an old map of America and realizing entire black towns that once thrived have practically vanished from history. Not because they failed, but because most people were never taught they existed. After emancipation, thousands of black Americans didn't just survive. They built towns. They created banks, schools, newspapers, farms, churches, and businesses from the ground up. Some became economic powerhouses. Some elected black leaders decades before much of the country accepted the idea. But then something changed, and what nobody tells you is why so many of these places disappeared from the conversation. Here's a couple of things to keep in the back of your mind. One of these communities became a symbol of black self-determination that terrified its opponents, and another quietly helped reshape an entire region without most Americans ever hearing its name. Think you know the real story of American history? Let's find out. We're digging into 12 remarkable towns. Why they were built, what made them flourish, and why their stories deserve a place in the history books. Surprisingly, some are still alive today, while others exist only in memories and forgotten photographs. And trust me, you're not ready for what's next. Ignoring stories like these doesn't just leave history incomplete, it changes how we understand America itself. If you like discovering the chapters everyone else skipped, hit subscribe. It's basically the cheapest history degree you'll ever earn. Let's break it down. Number 12, Mound Bayou. Picture the Mississippi Delta in 1887. Endless cotton fields. Jim Crow tightening its grip. Freedom had technically arrived, but opportunity not so much. Now, imagine deciding the solution wasn't to wait for equality, but to build an entirely new town from scratch. That's exactly what Isaiah T. Montgomery and his cousin Benjamin T. Greene, both formerly enslaved men and sons of people once held on Jefferson Davis's plantation, set out to do. They purchased thousands of acres of wilderness in the Mississippi Delta, about 20 miles from Cleveland, and founded Mound Bayou, one of America's most successful all-black towns. This wasn't just another settlement, it was a statement. The location wasn't chosen because it was convenient, it was chosen because it was isolated. Swamps, forests, and undeveloped land gave residents something incredibly valuable for the time: room to govern themselves, own property, and build without constant interference. And they built fast. Within a few decades, Mound Bayou had schools, churches, cotton gins, general stores, hotels, restaurants, a newspaper, professional offices, and one of the most remarkable achievements of all, a black-owned bank serving the local community. Think about that for a second. At a time when many black Americans couldn't even vote safely, residents here were running businesses, lending money, educating children, and managing local government. That's not surviving, that's nation building on a small scale. By the early 1900s, Mount Bayou had grown to roughly 8,000 acres of land and supported a thriving agricultural economy centered on cotton. Black farmers owned land. Merchants kept wealth circulating locally. Teachers trained future generations. Doctors established medical practices when segregation shut many hospital doors elsewhere. Perhaps the town's greatest contribution came in healthcare. In 1942, the Tabarayan Hospital opened its doors, becoming one of the South's few modern hospitals owned and operated for black patients during segregation. For countless families across Mississippi, this wasn't simply a hospital. It was the only realistic option. That alone changed lives. National leaders noticed. Even President Theodore Roosevelt reportedly praised Mount Bayou as an example of black economic achievement. Booker T. Washington frequently highlighted the town as proof that education, entrepreneurship, and community institutions could create lasting independence despite enormous barriers. Of course, history rarely lets success stay uncomplicated. The Delta economy depended heavily on cotton. When mechanized farming reduced labor demand, thousands of residents left searching for work during the Great Migration. Highways shifted commerce elsewhere, businesses closed, population declined. Today, Mount Bayou remains an incorporated town with a population of around 1,200 people, far smaller than its peak, but still carrying a legacy far bigger than its size. And here's the irony. You know, people often claim black communities only prospered after the civil rights movement. But honestly, Mount Bayou quietly disproved that decades earlier. It showed what was possible when people had ownership, education, political representation, and the freedom to invest in one another. Here's a statistic that's worth remembering. Founded in 1887, built on roughly 8,000 acres, home to one of the South's most important black-owned hospitals, developed its own schools, businesses, bank, newspaper, churches, and civic institutions. And, you know, it still exists nearly 140 years later. That's not forgotten history, that's hidden history. You know what's funny? People love saying nobody ever gave them a chance. Meanwhile, Mount Bayou looked around, shrugged, and said, "Fine, we'll build the town ourselves." It's hard to argue with that level of determination. That's basically the historical version of bringing your own chair because nobody saved you a seat. It's amazing how history classes can spend weeks memorizing dates from obscure European treaties, but somehow skip entire American towns, where thousands of black families built functioning economies from nothing. That's like teaching someone basketball history and never mentioning the three-point line. You're technically teaching, but you're leaving out a pretty important chapter. If you had the chance, would you have moved to a self-governed town like Mount Bayou to build a new life from the ground up? Yes or no? Let me know in the comments. Number 11, Hobson City. If Mount Bayou proved an all-black town could be built from the ground up, Hobson City proved something just as powerful. You didn't always need untouched wilderness to create freedom. Sometimes you had to carve it out right next door to the people trying to keep it from you. Welcome to Hobson City, Alabama. Just outside Anniston, this tiny community became one of the South's boldest political statements. In 1899, black residents voted to incorporate their own municipality, making Hobson City the first incorporated all-black municipality in Alabama. Think about the timing. Jim Crow laws were tightening across the South. Voting rights were being stripped away and segregation was becoming law. Most communities were losing political power. Hobson City somehow gained it. The town was named after Richmond Pearson Hobson, a Spanish-American war naval hero and later congressman who supported its incorporation. But make no mistake, the real story belongs to the black citizens who saw local government as more than paperwork. It was survival. Incorporation meant electing their own officials, maintaining local services, collecting taxes, and making decisions without waiting for someone else to grant permission. That was revolutionary. The location mattered too. Sitting in Calhoun County beside the growing industrial city of Anniston, Hobson City gave black families access to jobs in nearby foundries, railroads, and manufacturing while allowing them to build a community with its own identity. It became a place where teachers, laborers, ministers, entrepreneurs, and veterans could own homes and participate directly in civic life. The numbers tell an impressive story. By the early 20th century, the town had established churches, schools, local businesses, and a functioning municipal government. Over time, its population stabilized at around 700 to 800 residents, a size it has remained close to even today. While small in numbers, its political significance has always outweighed its square mileage. Here's what makes Hobson City different from many other towns on this list. Its greatest achievement wasn't becoming wealthy, it was becoming self-governing. That distinction matters. Political independence meant residents could elect black mayors and council members at a time when black political participation across much of the South was being systematically dismantled. The town became living proof that local government could reflect the people who actually lived there. Of course, history had other plans. Segregation limited investment. Industrial jobs fluctuated, Younger generations left for larger cities during the Great Migration and later economic shifts.